Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Sandi on the First podcast, and I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, Bonnie Brindle, also known as the Anxiety Avenger. Bonnie is on a mission to assist adults in releasing anxiety and reclaiming the joy that anxiety often steals from us. Anxiety can be a relentless thief, robbing us of healthy relationships, diminishing our job satisfaction, and hold us hostage in our own pain. But fear not, because Bonnie's here to guide us in unblocking the stuck energy behind anxiety, helping us find balance and joy once again. She is the first-time author of Cracking the Crazymakers Code, 9 Simple Steps to Ease Your Anxiety, where she shares practical strategies to help you navigate the complexities of anxiety. You can reach Bonnie on her website at bonniebrindle.com, on LinkedIn, which is Bonnie-Brindle, the Anxiety Avenger, and her email is bonnie@bonniebrindle.com. A pre-conversation with Bonnie. She's the Anxiety Avenger, and you'll hear all about that. And I just want to say welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sandi. I'm super excited. As the Anxiety Avenger, I help people who may or may not be aware of their own levels of anxiety to find their ways out of that. I created my own path out of debilitating panic disorder and agoraphobia in my earlier adult life. I was trapped at home at one point and had to figure and find my way out of that. And all the things that I've learned over the years and ways of coping. I'm now a therapist and transformational coach, and I help people who struggle with anxiety also figure out the roots of their anxiety and take themselves forward.
So basically, you turned the thing that was a negative into a positive.
Yes, I did. And it was a much better decision than some that I was thinking about making when I was really in those dark, dark places. But I reached out for help when I needed it, and that started me on my own path. So when I wrote my book, Cracking the Crazymakers Code, I built a path in there for others to try taking their first steps through too, and start their own trajectory to let go of anxiety and that breeds anger and frustration and relationship issues and job dissatisfaction and all the things.
Can you tell us a little bit about what agoraphobia is?
Yes, I can. So anybody who's ever dealt with panic attacks, and I know that's common for a lot of folks, panic attacks can lead to agoraphobia, which is the fear, literally translated as fear of the marketplace. It's a fear of going out into the world to do anything, really. And having a panic disorder, I had panic attacks in places where I would feel trapped. For instance, in line at the grocery store, someone's in front of me with a cart and someone pull up behind me with a cart, and you're kind of stuck in that little lane there for a minute.
Yes.
That would send me right into a panic attack. And then that particular store, it's like, I'm not going in there anymore. And then, oh, that happened at the bank. And, oh, I can sit in the middle of the movie theater. And pretty soon, life gets smaller and smaller. And
Yes.
people get stuck and don't leave their homes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I have a friend whose mom, when we were in high school, I think that's what she had. Now that you're telling me about the symptoms, and she never left home. And we just always wondered, like, as teenagers, well, what's wrong with her? Because she never came to the school play. If you went, we had to go to her house, and then she was, I don't know how to verbalize it. She was keeping her daughter inside with her. She was even afraid for her daughter to go out. School was a must, but anything else, you had to beg and plead with her. Can you send her? She's like, crazy, bad world is out there kind of thing. And now that you're saying that, she may have had that and just not been diagnosed with that.
Yes, it's probably exactly right. And it's really difficult. And I refer to that as the crazy making generational inheritance, that it's difficult to not pass that on to your kids and to try to limit them in their lives too, because that fear that people have who are stuck at home certainly transfer it onto others sometimes. So it's a really important thing to get help if you're someone who is stuck at home, because it does seep into all of everybody else around you.
But it's not a hereditary thing, right? It's a learned behavior, or is it hereditary?
Agoraphobia as one type of anxiety isn't hereditary necessarily, but anxiety can be a combination of genetic
Mm,
and just outer world influences that come together. But definitely both of my parents were anxious people, and my dad drank to cover up his anxiety.
maybe.
So there's definitely some genetic stuff that was passed to me, and then the behavioral stuff too is, yeah, it's a mix.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And let's talk about your first.
Let's see.
Were you the first to have agoraphobia in your family?
As far as I know, yes, I was the first to actually be stuck with agoraphobia in my family. I was the first to graduate from college in my family, and I had to make two attempts at that, because at my first attempt, I had dropped out after first semester because I became so anxious I couldn't go to classes.
Mm.
That was devastating because it took a lot for me to get to college in the first place, and then I had to withdraw and
And
work.
when did you go back? What made you go back?
I went back a couple of years later. I really started doing the work. As I said, when I reached out, and my darkest time was when I had to return home after that first college semester. I really was wondering whether I wanted to continue or not. That was my lowest point. And I reached out for help then, and then started a path forward. So a couple of years later, I did go back to school, and I commuted to a veterinary technician course for a couple years, and that led me to psychology and education, masters and blah. But yeah, I went back.
Hooray. No, well, you know what? You didn't stop.
No,
That's the good thing. You
right.
kept on and you got help.
That is key. I could not have kept on without that help. And it's interesting now when I work, I have a couple of clients dealing with agoraphobia right now. It's more common than you think. And like you said, you're looking back at your neighborhood mom and like, it's pretty more common than most people recognize, and at different degrees. But I'm working with a couple of clients with agoraphobia right now. And some of the challenges for them that I didn't have is the ease of being stuck. When I was 18 and 19 years old, I had to go out to get food. I had to leave the house to work.
Wow,
These days, you don't have to go anywhere,
that's
ever,
true.
right? You can order everything under the sun and never leave your house.
I never thought of that.
That just really came up for me recently when I was working with a young man who's struggling, and he's like, I don't have to leave.
So technology actually is enabling agoraphobia.
Yes. And that was a revelation for me in the last few months. It is.
So how do you get people over that? How do you get and this is fascinating to me. I'm sorry.
Of course, please.
How do you get someone who doesn't have to go out and the world comes to them now, right? How
Mm.
do you teach them or encourage them to go out? What methods do you use to get them out of that?
Well, the necessity of leaving the home is pretty much gone, but the desire, people don't lose the desire for the things that they miss. I want to go for a walk on a trail. I want to go to a theater performance. I want to go do this with my friends or my spouse. One of my clients has two little kids getting ready to go to preschool, and that is going to be something when the
Yes.
kids start leaving for school, and potentially, like you described your neighbor, then the kids start leaving the house and going to school. How does that relationship going to be affected? So most people want to get out of this situation. And sometimes people give up. and stay stuck in it. But helping people recognize what they want. Like, what are the goals that you have? Things that you cannot do now that you would like to be able to do, and kind of help them hold on to that. But I use the therapeutic level of EFT tapping to help people remove the energy blocks in their body that anxiety causes. Sometimes big traumas or physical, sexual, psychological abuse, repeated difficulties can get stuck. They're not processed. They can get stuck in our energy systems and block. And EFT can help people remove those blocks, get the energy flowing through the meridians again, so that they can start taking steps. And then I also use wildlife imagery.
What is EFT?
EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. And it is, I'm sure you're familiar with acupuncture or acupressure.
Sure.
Right. So when you go to an acupuncturist or you go for acupressure, they are focusing on helping you move your energy through the meridians, the sort of lines and tracks of energy in our bodies, where things literally get blocked. And, centuries and centuries ago in China and Japan, the medical world was focused on keeping the flow of qi, keeping the flow of energy through the meridians. And so EFT combines the Chinese meridian system with talk therapy and also EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. All three of those amazing energetic therapies are combined in EFT, so that if you were saying to me, oh, I have a terrible fear of dogs because I was bitten as a child.
That is me.
That is you. You would tell me about that. And while you're talking about it, instead of just talking about it and then getting reactivated and then, oh, end of appointment, see you later. Then we move the energy through your body, through the tapping on certain points of the meridians to help you depress that fear and ease it. And also the eye movement, left, right. Sometimes it's done with sound, ear. Sometimes with tapping on the outside of the legs helps to the left and right hemispheres of the brain sort of reconnect around traumas that have set stress in there, that, for lack of a better word, that have set stress there that gets stuck. And it's all about moving the energy appropriately.
And just tapping allows you to do that? Or you have to tap certain points or pressure points?
Yes, certain meridian points. Yes, we start with the karate chop point on the outside of the hand, where we do the setup statement. I was bitten as a 10-year-old by my neighbor's dog, and when I think about that now, it's about a 7 on a 10 scale of fear for me. And then we start moving through. The dog bit me. I reached out. It grabbed my arm. And it's amazing. All I can say is that's energetic psychology is amazing. When I work on myself or someone helps me work on something, I can literally feel the energy come right through my body and out of my feet. I always feel it come out of my feet. It's really incredible.
And where do you go to get this? I've passed acupuncture places, but I've never really seen like come here for EFT, or I've never seen any of that. Where do you go?
Well, I suppose if you looked up therapists with a holistic bent, you would find EFT practitioners. And I trained with the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychologies to learn to do this and offer it to clients. But you could certainly Google therapists in your area who offer EFT tapping. Also, I'm fortunate to know and be treated by folks who work in Jin Shin Jitsu, which is a Japanese meridian-based energy flow modality too. And I am not a practitioner of that, but I do share with my own clients the practices that I do, that I've learned from them, that really help me. And then back in 2005, I developed wildlife imagery as a therapeutic modality. So I combine all three of those things, which are all pretty alternative and really effective energy moving modalities for people.
When you say wildlife imagery, like pictures of animals, pictures of different things, different animals?
I do take folks through exploring what environments they're attracted to, the African savanna or the temperate rainforest or northern beaches, and the animals that they're attracted to in those places. And we look into what those animals, birds, insects, what their powers are, and where the client is struggling. I'm struggling with communication. I have fear of stepping out into something new. I need power to defend myself. I need protection. And we help them figure out which animals that you could connect to in an imagery way. And yes, we do draw, write, build clay models, whatever kinds of things turn people on to focus. And to take animals with them. And it's something that nobody else has to know you're doing. So a quick example for me is I had to have an MRI some years ago. And as somebody with claustrophobia and having not so much. And if you've ever been fully in an MRI machine, head and the whole
Yes.
body, and it's bang, 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 all this crazy noise. And I really didn't want to have to do sedation. So I brought my wolf, which is a high-level protection animal, and I brought a horse, which is a high-level power, grace, and freedom animal.
When you say brought,
in my mind.
In your mind. Okay.
They were right next to me, and they slid into the tube with me, and I had my fingers in the fur of the wolf, and I could touch the shoulder of horse and just have them help me ground myself and stay in it and talk to them. And I was able to do it without sedation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So that's quick and dirty, but yeah, that's.
Now that they just play music in the MRI.
Yes, they do. And I have my own music. My animal nature music.
Yeah, my husband just had one, and I'm like, just listen to the music. But it was fine. So thank you. That was really helpful. I've not heard about some of these different techniques. I heard of tapping, but I wasn't quite sure what it did. And sometimes you hear things and you're like, oh, that's so frou-frou, or what is tapping going to do? But it's good to have an explanation of that.
And it's so powerful and so profound. And whoa is our big word, right? For all of the things we don't understand. And when you look at the generations and generations and generations of people in the Eastern world who use these modalities as main medical practice, hello, we got to pay attention.
Absolutely. We're behind.
We're way behind. And then
we're ahead in a lot of things, but we're behind in that aspect, I have to say. We are coming back to herbal medicines and, going back to what worked for other people. It's like your grandmother always picked a piece of bush and got rid of her stomachache.
Yes, and indigenous people here in the US do the same thing every day. We have so much to learn.
It's true.
So much to learn.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes. So what are some of your other firsts that you have, Bonnie?
Well, I would say I haven't done the research on this, but I'm guessing that I am the first person who suffered severe panic disorder and agoraphobia who became a therapist to help people with dental anxiety, because that was a huge issue for me, was getting to a dentist and getting the care that I need was extremely difficult. So I'm pretty sure I'm the first former completely terrified dental patient who now helps dental patients.
And that's a good thing. You put it to good use. Like I said, it's a fear and you turned it into a very positive thing of helping. Even people without agoraphobia hate going to the dentist.
Oh, sure.
It's just one of those things. You hear that droll sound. I think I was lucky because when I was very, very young, probably in public school, primary school, my dentist was the best dentist ever. He would explain, even as a child, he would explain to you what was going to happen. He's like, I'm going to numb your tooth. I'm going to do this. You're going to feel a little sensation. And he would just explain every single thing. Dr. Gordon, God bless you if you're still around. But he was so good. I was never afraid of going to the dentist.
Wow. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, he was just really an amazing dentist and he had a lot of children come to him. His office was right around the corner from the school.
Oh, great for business.
And then he gave you a lollipop, something, lollipop or something. And I used to wonder, well, he just cleaned my teeth. Why is he giving me a lollipop?
Oh, you were a smart kid over there wondering about that.
But it didn't stop me from sucking on my lollipop out of there, though. But really, I guess there are ways, and those kind of techniques should be taught a lot more.
And that is my mission, to help dentists as well learn to communicate better with patients who are anxious, because it's a continuum. There are people like me who are just even pick up the phone and make the appointment was too much. And then there are people that have certain triggers, the sounds, the smells,
Yes.
lights, the needle, all the things, right? Being trapped in a position with a lack of power. There are so many different ways that people become anxious. And I have to say, Sandi, you and I have in common the fabulous pediatric dentist of our childhood. I had a fabulous Dr. Giudotti. He was wonderful. And he had little toys, like little rings
Yes.
in the thing. And Ranger Rick magazine was my first real connection to nature. And it happened in that dental office. So fantastic. And so things happen at different times in people's lives to make,
Yes.
I went from happy kid to not happy adult. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be 100% an issue of dental care. Another trauma can help trigger, right, sounds and
Yes.
sights and smells and feels in a different environment completely, which is really kind of what happened to me. I mean, I did have one negative dental experience, but the agoraphobia of my young adult life activated the dental anxiety, and off I went. But it's interesting how our minds pick up on things and what we hold on to, and it can be let go though. Anxiety is just trapped energy. We can do something with it.
Do you see business owners and businesswomen have this kind of anxiety about their businesses? Do you work with business owners at all?
I do. Right now, I am mostly focused with dentists and moving into veterinarian and medical in general. All three of those categories are practitioners who deal with a lot of stress, sometimes don't deal with it well, sometimes end up with addictions, depressions, suicidal ideation, because the pressure is so enormous on them to perform the duties that they have. And a lot of them are in their own practices and they have to manage everything. And they may be really great at being a practitioner and not great at being a business person, or not great at being interpersonal. Those things can be learned, but sort of all three directions right now, in helping the practitioner develop better communication with the patient, and in the veterinary with the pet parent, and the patient, in order to reduce their stress and their burnout. Because it's not fun, right? Have somebody come to you that's like, "Ah," Halloween kitty in the doorway, right?
Yeah.
And have that every day. That's no fun for them either. It makes the work very difficult. So I'm looking at both ends of those things, that the client or patient and the practitioner can develop a better relationship and everybody can benefit.
I see a lot of business women, particularly, who are just very siloed into themselves. They're a solo practitioner and all the weight is on their shoulders to run the businesses. And I can imagine how much stress, especially if you have a condition like agoraphobia, when you're the leader and people are looking at you to lead and you have a condition, maybe you don't talk about it, but they would be wondering why do you behave a certain way? Do you think that this should be taught more in schools about these kind of conditions? Because you don't really hear about any mental illness conditions in school.
No, you certainly don't, but you get picked on a lot, or pick on other kids around those things, right? I spent 23 years as a middle school teacher, so I know a lot about how that world functions. And yeah, it's something that needs to be taught. When I was teaching in middle school, I had a group like EFT tapping at the 12-year-old level. Kids would come and talk about, oh, my parents are getting divorced. I can't handle the homework. This teacher and I don't get along. I don't know what to do. My dog died. All the things that happen in a 12-year-old's world, and they're under so much pressure. And never mind that I'm afraid to go to school because I might get shot. Right.
Yes.
So yes, mental health in the schools, it's growing slowly, but boy, we need a push right now to be really focusing on that, because where else do we learn? And then agoraphobia is one type of anxiety, but
There are
social
many.
anxiety, generalized OCD, all the things that people struggle with. And you're talking about those siloed businesswomen who are like this. Don't tell me they're not anxious and frustrated and
Right.
overwhelmed, right? If we can just reach out to each other and engage with that and express that. And that's a lot of when I wrote the memoir part of my book. It's about how I went from not being able to tell anybody. By the time I withdrew from college, I really thought I was just going nuts. And then that's it. I'm gone. I can't even get on a bus to go to a class. I can't stay in a classroom. And like, what the heck's wrong with me?
But then don't people go stay away from her because partially they're afraid? It's the unknown. They don't know why you're like that. And so instead of reaching out to you, sometimes people just back off. Like she's crazy.
Absolutely.
That's the word, right? She's crazy.
Yes.
Let's stay away from her.
Yep. And then if you're as good at hiding it as I was, it comes out somewhere else. Maybe you're angry easily. Maybe you're withdrawn in ways that people don't necessarily say, oh, that person's anxious, but geez, she gets really mad so fast. Or I don't know, you
She's
talk to
bitchy.
her.
She's such a bitch.
Oh, and there's the old female word we love so much. Gosh, she's such a bitch. Yes, I've heard it more than once. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
I've used it and I've been called one. So, that is a go-to word when we don't understand each other.
That's right. It's a go-to word when we don't understand. It's a favorite against women. Exactly. And, the guy's an a-hole because he's always mad about something, or he's not friendly, or he's withdrawn, or he thinks he's all that.
At
That's all anxiety. Every bit of it. It's just stuff we're holding on to that we're trying to create this avatar of ourselves. And it's just not working. Everybody
who
knows.
makes the first move though? Let's say I have a boss and I feel like my boss is just such a B word. Who makes the first move? Do you, as the employee, ask like if something's wrong? Because you don't usually ask upwards, right? You don't make that ask like, who are you? I'm afraid they're going to say, who are you to be asking me this? I'm your boss. So how do you get around all of that?
Whew, that's a Pandora's box you just opened, Dr. Sandy. The old workplace situation when upward is the problem. Oh, it's really tough because you cannot, in that environment, really get in with most people who are your superiors, quote unquote, right? To survive 10 years of a malignant narcissistic principal that I worked with, I went to two techniques. Anytime I had to have a conversation with him, I was mostly asking questions instead of making statements. Is there some way I'm not performing that is there something missing for you in what and then the other piece, if I was asked a question, well, what do you think about it? Duh, and how should da 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 da? I never answered at the time, ever. Well, let me think about that and get back to you. That keeps the argument, stress, crazy from blowing up, because sometimes those sort of narcissistic edged people are coming at us like this. They're looking for this. And oh, that's a great question. Let me think about that a bit and then get back to you. Dissipated. There's nowhere to go.
I'm so not that. My mouth moves faster than my than my ear. As soon as I hear it, I have an answer. I'm like, well, what do you want? And that's something, again, we have to learn to just stop and not respond sometimes. I learned it later in life. And when I was in the
No.
corporate world, it was very late. I learned it very late in life. I was one of those BITCHs. I'm sure I was labeled that at times, but I literally learned because I was running a team and I didn't want my team to be like afraid of me. And I didn't take any classes. I remember one person had a talk with me and just said, Sandy, if you really want to succeed in business, you can't have people hating you all the time or hating to work with you all the time, because they work with you because you're really smart and you get the work done and you know the work so well that they know they'll get promoted. So they will sacrifice and work with you for a year, but then they're probably going to move on. But you have to learn to be a better manager.
Yeah.
That got to me one day. And I decided, Grandma says you can catch flies with honey. So let's catch a couple of flies over here. And
Mm-hmm.
it started to work. It really just being nice to people and not responding. And I learned my lesson. I could not have had a business if I hadn't learned that lesson.
That's a very important lesson. And so many businesses and companies and corporations haven't learned it yet. This hope. And that's one of the things working with dental teams that I look at is there's a lot of that top down. This is the way we have to do it, to staff. And when we can involve everyone's ideas, we're working on this thing. How do we make this better? And not just, hey, we have an employee suggestion box. You can put something in and later on we'll throw it out and not say anything to you, but actually valuing all of what every person on a team can bring, because there tends to be with highly educated, high position people sometimes tend to think that the people in the lower levels of a company or business aren't as smart, aren't as quick, aren't as creative. And that is so not true.
You can't do your job without them.
No. And to access that kind of connection and teamwork around everything. And let me know, you guys, tomorrow afternoon, bring ideas, what you got. Let's look at everything what we've got. Let's pool the ideas together. Let's talk about this and build something. Then people have a stake in it. Why would anyone ever want to work for anybody else if they have no stake in it? They're not appreciated, right? They're not recognized. It's not that hard. It is hard because it's
It
not.
is hard. It is hard. I should take that back. It is very
Yeah.
hard to do, but you have to stick to it and you have to practice it. And I'm glad to say by the time I left corporate, I was really I can even say that I was a great manager, but better yet, I got feedback from my team. People wanted to work on my team, right? That's the best feedback that you can get.
That's when you know. That's when you know.
Yes. Every corporation should be forced to have a psychologist. I firmly believe that. If you're a certain size, you should have a psychologist on board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To have that help with anybody who's stressing about certain things, but to help build, see where those things can come together better and build communication and value in everyone. And often those folks at the top are anxious about staying at the top and being in control, which again is anxiety. When they can release that and recognize that it's not a threat to have everybody else be a part of things. It's not a threat to hear from others, and that there's genius at every level in any system.
Absolutely.
It really is. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. This was very interesting. I enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks.
And where can people find you, Bonnie, if they want to reach out to you?
Well, they can certainly find me at my very easy to access website, bonniebrindle.com.
Mine is SandiWebster.com. So
right. I found you were so easy to find. And my book can be found on
Hacking the Crazymakers Code.
Yes, 9 simple steps to ease your anxiety. So it's a brief. I like things that fit in a bag in a pocket, and I can hop on the plane in LaGuardia and finish it when I hit San Francisco. It's a brief memoir of how I discovered the roots of my anxiety. And then at each chapter, there's a reflection, mantra, and action step that are built into this printable journal, where people can work on taking their own path out of those things we're stuck in, and figure out, maybe not even recognizing that it's anxiety, but that just kind of stuck and unhappy and not feeling good in relationship. There's a lot of stuff in there that people can start working on and take a better path. And I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now if I hadn't done all the work that I've done for myself.
You sure wouldn't have. You sure wouldn't have. And I can say you would have missed a lot if you didn't take the path that you did. Because I certainly learned a lot today.
Thanks.
I'll look at people a little differently when they get upset instead of screaming back. That's my thing. I'll scream back at you if you scream at me. No, I would love, I'm going to order your book
Thank you.
so that I can see more about how I can help in my daily life and to recognize those kind of symptoms of anxiety.
Oh, and I'm so glad you said it that way. It just reminded me of my dermatologist, with whom I visit way more than I'd care to. And he's a lovely gentleman. But
Is that why you visit him? He's a lovely gentleman.
No, because I'm so pale and I spent way too many years in the sun. But the fact that he's a lovely gentleman is a bonus.
Yes.
But he read the book, and he's kind of typical physician, quiet, on the thing, a little bit of an introvert, not a super social. He reads the book. He says to me, "It was a gift to read your book." I said, "Thank you. What about it? What do you mean by that?" He said, I have much better understanding, not only of you, who I've worked with for 20 years, but everybody who comes into my office. It gives me a different view of how they're coming in and what they're dealing with, and how overwhelming this situation really can be for some people. I really didn't recognize that.
That is a big applause. That's great. Did you have him write a testimonial?
We're working on that. He's a little bit shy. I don't have to tell anybody who you are. Yeah, I'll be seeing him in a month, so we'll testimonials next.
Draft it up for him so that he can edit it.
I'm showing up with a notebook, Dr. Sandy.
The old marketer in me.
That's right. No, I'm showing up with that notebook and pencil in my hand.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure, Bonnie.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you, and thank you for coming on the first.
Thank you so much. It was fabulous to be here, and I'm glad to help your audience out. If anybody wants to hop on my website and just ask a question, ask away. Thank you.
This is Dr. Sandy. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.